Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're exploring an absolutely mind-blowing perspective on what is arguably one of the most famous texts in human history, the Book of Genesis. But we aren't looking at it the way you might think. We're actually exploring it as an inner cosmology. It's a profound, step-by-step map of consciousness itself, tracking the journey of your very own soul. To set the stage, there's this slightly cheeky quote from the Zohar, which is the foundational text of Kabbalah. The outer story is for children. The inner story is for the wise. Basically, what this tradition is telling us is, hey, to really grasp this stuff, we've got to put aside literal history and outdated myths. Instead, we are looking at a deeply encoded, incredibly precise psychological map of your own brain.
Here's our roadmap for the first 11 chapters. We'll hit the ultimate inner map, unity and the perfect mind, waking up to the ego, the inner ego wars, the big psychological reset, and finally, Exile as the curriculum.
And just to be super clear right up front, this is not some modern, trendy New Age theory. We're talking about over 3,000 years of inner readings. Contemplatives across 6 entirely different esoteric traditions, from Jewish mysticism and Christian Gnosticism to Vedanta and Sufism, have independently confirmed these hidden psychological stages. It's literally a massive cross-cultural convergence that has just been hiding in plain sight.
Section 1. The Ultimate Inner Map. So to make this massive shift in perspective, we kind of have to contrast two completely different readings. On one hand, you've got the dry, literal Sunday school reading, right? The history, the myth, the felt boards. But on the other hand, you have this intense, esoteric reality. And this brilliantly illustrates how, in the inner reading, characters like Adam, Eve, the serpent, and Noah aren't historical figures walking around in antiquity. They are actually different aspects of a single experiencing awareness. Specifically, they represent your awareness as it shifts, struggles, and evolves.
Section 2. Unity and the perfect mind.
Let's start at the very beginning of creation. If you strip away the literalism, the opening of Genesis is really about pure, undivided awareness, systematically making space for the physical world to appear. It's actually incredible when you look at the cross-cultural convergence here between two vastly different traditions. In Kabbalah, Ein Sof, which is the limitless divine, contracts to make space for distinct forms. And in Vedanta, Brahman, undivided consciousness, projects Maya, the appearance of multiplicity. It's the exact same psychological cosmogony, the perfect undivided mind dividing itself to create a reality of separate things. Which, of course, brings us to the Garden of Eden. And listen, Eden is not a place on a cartographer's map somewhere. Eden is the mind's natural state. It's that blissful, transparent union of the pre-lapsarian mind before naming, before division, and long before that nagging separate I took over. Honestly, it's exactly what your brain feels like before you start overthinking absolutely everything.
Section 3. Waking up to the ego.
But you can't stay in the garden forever. The glitch happens. Let's move to and see how this builds because it unfolds in 3 specific phases. First up, we have what is known as the cognitive fall. Adam names the animals. This totally represents our brain's highly annoying habit of putting labels and categories on literally everything. Then, Adam falls into a deep sleep, which represents the birth of the unconscious mind. And finally, the moral fall, eating the forbidden fruit. By naming, separating, and categorizing reality, we inevitably birth the separate ego. The I is born.
So what about the serpent?
Well, these esoteric traditions, they don't see a literal talking snake, they see a cosmic catalyst. In the Gnostic tradition, the serpent is a liberator bringing essential knowledge. In Kabbalah, it's the necessary evil inclination that is absolutely required for human free will. In Jungian psychology, it's the catalyst for the ego separating from the unconscious. The serpent is what forces us to grow up. The wound of leaving paradise and the gift of human consciousness are the exact same event.
Section 4. The Inner Ego Wars.
Okay, so once the separate mind is born, it immediately starts fighting with itself. Enter Cain and Abel. But remember, our rule here, these aren't ancient brothers fighting in a dirt field. These are the 2 terrible roommates living inside your own head right now. Cain's name in Hebrew literally means acquisition. He is the grasping, ego-driven, accumulating self. Abel means breath. He is the fleeting, insubstantial, surrendered present moment. And what happens? The must-acquire things roommate constantly silences and overrides the just breathe and chill roommate.
And this internal conflict, it just scales up until we hit the Tower of Babel. Babel represents the archetypal spiritual error of trying to reach heaven through construction rather than transformation. It's the ultimate hubris of the separate mind. It's when we try to forcefully build our way to enlightenment, stacking up dogmas or spiritual achievements, without doing the hard, messy work of actually dissolving and changing our inner selves.
Section 5. The Big Psychological Reset.
Eventually, this overloaded, grasping ego reaches an absolute breaking point. To understand this phase, we actually look at the profound Sufi concept of fana, which means the annihilation of the lower self, or the ego. This is the inner reading of the universal flood. It is not a historical weather event. It's a total psychological wash cycle. The ego-structured mind faces dissolution, but the waters that destroy are the exact same waters that cleanse. Only the purified, reorganized seed of consciousness, represented by Noah and the Ark, survives the flood to start again.
Which brings us to Section 6. Exile as the curriculum.
So the flood recedes, the ego is reset, but wait, we are still out of Eden. Why are we still struggling? Well, because the messy human struggle is actually exactly what we need. Expulsion from Eden is not a punishment. As the brilliant Kabbalistic concept Yerida Tzorech Aliyah explains, it is a descent for the purpose of ascent. It's a highly specific educational program. Think about it. You simply cannot know the true warmth of a fire until you've been forced out into the bitter cold. Exile from unity is a required structure for genuine conscious growth.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is it sets up the ultimate punchline to our whole inner journey. If our goal is to eventually return to unity, what exactly guards the return to the tree of life?
Genesis tells us it's guarded by cherubim and an ever-turning flaming sword. But esoterically, that revolving flaming sword is the ego mind itself. It's like a hyper-strict club bouncer that only kicks you out if you actively try to force your way in. The obstacle is generated by the approach itself. The separate self cannot achieve unity precisely because it wants it as a separate self. The return to the garden only happens when the seeker dissolves.
So the crucial point is this. Even in our difficult exile, we are deeply protected. God gives Cain a mark, and while historically that's been wildly misused, the text actually describes a mark of profound comfort and protection. It guarantees that the indestructible divine spark, what Kabbalists call the neshama, is never abandoned, even in our most grasping, violent, ego-driven moments. Your inner spark remains safely shielded and completely whole, no matter how lost in the weeds your ego gets.
And I'll leave you with this incredible, totally Matrix-level twist from a 2nd century Gnostic text called The Gospel of Truth. Perhaps Adam never woke. Perhaps we are still the dream he is dreaming. If this ancient map of consciousness is right, maybe our entire reality, our sense of separation and our struggling ego, is just the content of that deep sleep. It certainly leaves you questioning your own reality, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparked a completely new way for you to explore the vast, profound map of your own consciousness.